I am currently in the middle of 10 books. Welcome to week 16 of Weekly Reads. My name is Annelisekristinereads. Welcome to my channel if you're new. Welcome back if you've seen one of my videos before. Today's video is going to be the books I read from April 28th to May 5th. It is the end of the month, and so I am in the middle of a lot of books to try and get them all done by the end of the month and meet my goals. I don't think I'm going to meet the series goal. I set a very ambitious goal to finish up 6 series this month, and while I've been focusing on series, I don't have a lot of series that just have like 1 or 2 books. So I've read a lot of books that are in series but haven't finished a ton, but we will see by the end of the month how that goes. If you want to know my monthly goals, I always have them on my Instagram and TikTok, which I should have linked down below. But my TikTok is Annelisekristinereads, like my YouTube, and my book Instagram is annelisekristinereads. So I am currently in the middle of 10 books. I'm always in the middle of a lot, but 10 is excessive for me. So we're gonna go over the 10 books, how I got myself into this situation. The first book that I started last night was Dream Girl Drama by Tessa Bailey. This is the 3rd book in the Big Shot series. My library loan came in, and the second book I'm currently reading, which we'll talk about in a minute, I needed a break from, and I just needed some like mindless reading. And this delivered. I got 40 pages in, and that's 12%. So I feel like this book will go pretty quickly. And it is about Sig, who is a hockey player, and he is on his way to meet his dad. His car breaks down, his phone is out of battery, and he stops at like this exclusive tennis club, and Chloe gets him in. Chloe is actually a prodigy harpist. The two of them end up hitting it off, and Sig goes on to meet his dad, who he doesn't have a great relationship with, and Chloe is there. Chloe's mom and Sig's dad are getting married, and so they are very torn on what to do. They're both adults, but yes, so we will see, because he called her his dream girl right off. It was very much instant love, which is definitely not my favorite. So if you do not like instant love, I would not recommend this book, but I'm gonna give it a go. And the second book I am currently reading is one of the 25 books I want to finish in 2025. So I want to finish it this month, so I have my second 2025 book down, but that is Elatsoe. It is the first book in a series, but it's by Darcie Littlebadger. This is a magical realism book, and I'm not a huge fan of magical realism, but I won this in a giveaway and I started reading it, and I like it for the most part, but Elatsoe has a ghost dog, and every time he goes crazy, something bad happens. He goes crazy at the beginning, and so she like rides her bike to the movie theater, and I feel like just like the common world things take me out of it, because it's such a magical fantasy like going on, and then there's texting. I don't know. Her cousin ends up dying, and he tells her who murdered him, and so she is on the hunt to prove this. He said this in like a ghost type form. The man he said murdered him, she finds out, is like this big philanthropist. It's very well known and does a lot of charity work and things like that. But she definitely gets the sense that something is up, and I am 30% done with that book. The third book that I'm currently reading that I will finish today is Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. This is one of the books on the Rory Gilmore book list, and again, I needed a second book for the end of the month, and I found this book on YouTube as an audiobook. I'm 90% of the way through. It is the most interesting book, but I 100% see why it's banned. It is about war, and the way it is written, it's just, I think they say so it goes like all the time, and just kind of like, it's almost a nonchalant, and so it goes, like that's happening, even though it's like this man who definitely is struggling with PTSD from this situation, and it's just, I don't know. I like it. It definitely keeps me intrigued. Anyways, the next book I am in the middle of, I'm 20% into Drums of Autumn by Diane Gabaldon. This is the 4th book in the Outlander series. This book is 43 hours of audio, and so it's gonna take me, I feel like, almost the whole week, but I have other audiobooks that are like gonna come due, so I'm very curious how this week is gonna go. I really enjoyed this series as an audiobook. I like listening to it and just going about my day. I understand completely how they were able to make a series out of each book, because they're so long and detailed, and I have started watching the series. I'm only on season 1. It's one of those books that's hard to explain, but there's time travel, historical, romance, war, just like, I don't know. I'm really enjoying it. The physical book I'm reading is The True Cowboy of Sunset Ridge. This is a cowboy romance where we meet Colt. Colt has given up the rodeo because one of his friends passed away and is back in Gold Valley kind of wrestling with what's next. and Mallory comes to town. He meets her, he really likes her, but doesn't necessarily want a relationship. She doesn't necessarily want a relationship either because she just got out of a bad relationship. But then a baby lands on his doorstep. It is not his, but a baby lands there, and Mallory, being a midwife and his tenant, ends up helping Colt navigate this baby situation. I am about 60% of the way through. There's like a novella at the end that I don't believe is part of Gold Valley, and so it really ends somewhere here. I started this in the morning, and then that evening I started When I Fall by J. Daniels. And while When I Fall is a contemporary small town romance, and that I know of doesn't have a baby, the way the characters were interacting were confusing me with this book, because I just started this book, and just their meeting and the way that they're interacting and their thoughts were very much similar. Like the guys were very similar, the girls were very similar. I don't believe like the books are actually that similar, but when I started this and that the same day, it was too much. So I put a pause on When I Fall. I did get 17% of the way through When I Fall. So once I finish this, I will pick that one back up. The next book that I'm in the middle of is an audiobook, and it's Straight On Till Morning by Liz Braswell. This is a twisted tale about Peter Pan. If Wendy didn't go to Neverland with Peter Pan, but went with Captain Hook. I got about 20% of the way through, but then library loans situations happened, and I just renewed that book. So it should be coming in the next couple weeks, but I just needed to listen to some other books in the meantime. So that one is also kind of on hold. The last 3 books I've talked about for a couple weeks. The first one is Jesus, the One, the Only by Beth Moore. I read this with my Bible study each morning. I am 65% of the way through, hoping to make a good chunk this week. Last week was super busy and I didn't get a chance to read that very often, or I didn't make the time to read that one very often. My goal is to read like 10-15 minutes of it each day, so I don't have a big goal. I don't think it'll be finished in the next week, but we'll see. The next 2 are ones I've talked about in every single weekly read since I changed formats and just talked about what I'm currently reading. The first one is The Gratitude 365. I just do one of the prompts a day. It doesn't have page numbers or dates, so I'm unsure where I'm at. I do eventually want to put page numbers on there. I don't know if it's going to happen this week. We'll see. And then the other book that I am reading will be done on December 31st, unless I get ahead in the plan, is the Bible. I am listening to a little part of it each day, and I'll be done by the end of the year. Those are the 10 books I have started. I don't like having 10 books started, but here we are. We're going to carry on and make some progress on these books. I'm hoping to finish 7 of them this week. I'm hoping to finish Dream Girl Drama, Elatsoe, Slaughterhouse 5, Drums of Autumn, True Cowboy of Sunset Ridge, When I Fall, and Straight On Till Morning. The last 2 I'm unsure about. It will depend on some like library loan situations, because When I Fall I'm reading on Kindle Unlimited, so I have some wiggle room there. And then Straight On Till Morning, I think because I renewed it, it got kind of pushed down a little bit on my audiobook loans. So I don't know if those 2 will be finished, but the other 5 should 100% be finished. Slaughterhouse 5 will be done today, and then Dream Girl, Elatsoe, and The True Cowboy should be done by Wednesday, because those are 3 books I want to finish by the end of the month. Drums of Autumn by the Diane Gabaldon. We'll just have to see how much time I have to audiobook listen, because as I said, it's quite a large book. I'll check in with you when I finish a book or when I'm reading. I finished Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. So let's talk about it a little bit. This was a book on the Rory Gilmore book list. It's just all the books that were mentioned in the Gilmore Girls series. I like picking 2 books off that list each month to just really diversify my reading. This book is one that I would not have normally picked up. It is a anti-war band classic, but my goodness, it kept my attention the whole entire time. And there were times when I would normally be reading an ebook, but I chose to listen to this audiobook instead because I was so intrigued by the book itself. This book has a really interesting perspective because the narrator is someone who's writing a book about war, about World War II and things that are going on, but doesn't want to write a book glorifying war. And this is very much an anti-war book. And we follow Billy before the war, while he's in the war, and then after the war. And we just see some really devastating PTSD effects. But the narrator is telling Billy's story as an outsider not wanting to write a glorified war book. So it was just a very interesting read. I'm really glad I read it, and I ended up giving it 3.75 stars.
It is April 30th, and I was planning to read Elatsoe or finish it last night, but I definitely fell asleep, and now I have 30 minutes left. My kids are still asleep. We don't have to get up for like 30 minutes. So if I time this right, I can finish this and then get them up and ready for school, but we shall see.
I finished Elatsoe by Darcie Littlebadger. It is the first book in the Elatsoe series, and this book is a young adult fantasy magical realism book where we follow Elatsoe, also known as Ellie, and she can see ghosts, we'll say. She has a ghost dog. There's very much more to it than that, but when this dog goes crazy, someone close to Ellie is in trouble. And so the book starts out, the dog is going crazy, and we find out it's her cousin that's been hurt, and he comes to her before he has passed and gives her a name of who was responsible. And so Ellie and some others go on a journey to find this man and figure out how the truth can come out. I really liked the fantasy elements of this book. Their family is Lapon Apache. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but they talk about their history and we get hints of the past. There is a prequel that I've since read, but it goes more into their past and kind of where some of this came from. But in this book, you definitely get bits and pieces of that. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. The only part I did not like about this book was the magical realism. There were parts that just kind of took me out of it. She went to a movie theater, she was texting, and it just like took me out of the magical fantasy world. This was also one of the 25 books I want to read in 2025 because I did win this in a Goodreads giveaway a few years ago.
Characters from book 2 in the Big Shot series, Burgess is on the same hockey team as Sig, and so Tallulah, his person, is getting to know Chloe. So it's fun to have a little cameo. I will say this is one of the books I was hoping to finish by the end of April, only because it's the end of a series, at least so far, and I could cross another series off my series list. I did not make my series goal for this month, which is fine. I made the other 2 goals. That just means I need to finish more series next month to stay like on track for the year, but I feel like I made a lot of progress, but I didn't read a ton of books in April either. Like for me, I read like 3/4 the pages I normally do. That's okay. April was really busy. I think May, June, July are going to be good reading months. August will be questionable, and September I feel like will be terrible because I have a new job that I'll be working a little bit more hours at than I currently work, at least the way it's working out. But we shall see. Maybe I'll be able to wake up earlier and read more in the morning, because that I used to do that and I have not been very good at that recently. So I want to get back to waking up early and getting some reading done before the kids wake up. I did do that this morning. I think I shared with you that, and that's when I finished Elatsoe, but that's like been one of the only times recently. So
I finished Dream Girl Drama, but not until the 2nd of May by Tessa Bailey. This is the 3rd book in the Big Shot series. I've talked about it. Our male main character is Sig. He is a hockey player. He lives in Boston. He meets Chloe, our female main character, who's a small prodigy harpist. After an afternoon of fun, the 2 of them realize their parents are dating, engaged, and while they are adults, so they will not be living together, they're very hesitant on exploring a relationship. Sig very much calls her his dream girl though. On top of that, Chloe ends up moving to Boston with Sig, but because of her harpist career. And so she ends up going to hockey games, and the media gets whiff of it, and it was just very dramatic, as the title might suggest. I have never been in a step sibling situation at any time in my life, but especially as adults. But I felt like the media and the book just made it really dramatic. I like Sig and Chloe fine. I felt like the plot was too dramatic for me, and I like drama, but it was just too much. I did end up giving it 3.5 stars. I finished True Cowboy of Sunset Ridge by Maisey Yates. It's book 14 in the Gold Valley series, and I've talked a little bit about how our male main character is Colt. He was in the rodeo, his friend passed away, and there ends up being a baby that's not his on his porch, and Mallory, the new to town midwife, and his tenant who lives on the same property ends up helping him. And while this is a fun cowboy romance, we definitely hit on survivor's guilt in Colt's case because of his friend, the influence Colt had on his friend, the situation his friend got himself into. Colt definitely felt like an older brother to his friend. And then Mallory came from a really not good situation, and so she is trying to get away and just dealing with all of that baggage. So they definitely have quite a bit to deal with separately. And so the other person has a lot to deal with as they are getting together and learning more about each other. I end up giving this book 4 stars. I finished Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. This is the third book in the Emily Wilde series. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of it. However, if you have not read the first two books, I don't know if I'd listen to the synopsis. With it being a third in the series, it's really hard to explain this book without giving like spoilers of the other two books. Because in this book, we're following Emily. From the first book, she has been very interested in fairies and learning about them. And her arch academic rival, Wendell, in the first book, is now her fiance. In previous books, we learned that Wendell is actually part like fairy and a prince. There's definitely been some drama in that area. Emily and Wendell are in his kingdom in this book. They do split up because Emily's trying to figure out how to stop this curse in regards to Wendell's kingdom. Wendell sends her so many letters throughout this book when they are apart and does not enjoy them being apart. I thought this was a fun book. It's definitely a little bit more action-packed than the cozy fantasy, but I wouldn't say it was like a fantasy. I feel like this book and the series in general has been a perfect mashup of cozy fantasy and fantasy. As the books have gone on, they've leaned a little bit more towards fantasy, but we still have Emily as a scholar and trying to learn all of these things about their history, and a little less of the fantasy high stakes. There's definitely some very high stakes in this book though, so that probably didn't make any sense, but this is a fantasy romance historical fiction. I really enjoyed it and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Today is May 5th, so it is the end of week 17. So let's talk about the books that I'm currently reading that are be going into week 18. We're going to start with the 2 books that I always have going, and I will for the entire year, and that is the gratitude journal that I try and do one a day. Hasn't always worked. And the Bible. Again, I try and do those one a day, and I have a Bible plan that if I do, I will finish by the end of the year. The third book that has been on this list for a very long time is Jesus, the One, the Only. I'm actually 92% of the way through. If I would have read one more day, I would have finished it, just because I do read little chunks at a time, and I thought I was going to be able to read one more day, and it just didn't happen. So it will be finishing this week, which I am so excited about. It's just the life of Jesus through Luke's perspective. The next book on my currently reading Goodreads list is Straight On Till Morning. I am 20% of the way through. This is a twisted tale by Liz Braswell. This book is the same as To Be Where You Are by Karon. That is the 14th book in the Mitford Year series. Both of them I am 20% of the way through, but library loans came due and these books I could easily renew, so I renewed them and they're just sitting on my currently reading. And that is actually the case for Drums of Autumn as well by Diane Gabaldon, which is the 4th book in the Outlander series, but I am 73% of the way through. This is a very long audiobook, so I probably have essentially the same amount in all 3 of these books left to listen to, but we had the 3rd book in the Emily Wilde series and the 3rd book in the Legendborn series. Both come due and both have long waits if I didn't listen to them. So these 3 audiobooks I'm not currently listening to, but they're on my currently reading just because I started reading them and I got a good chunk into them and I had to renew them, which made them go to the bottom of the list, essentially. I have a whole system because I rent things from the library. But a book I'm actually currently reading is When I Fall by J. Daniels. This is the 3rd book in the Alabama Summer series, which is a series I want to read this year because I started it last year. In this book, our male main character is Reed. Reed is Tessa's best friend, but he's also has a different girl, can't really commit, and that's due to his past relationship, which we find out. Beth is new to town and has had a really hard past and is just so excited to have an aunt and uncle because she didn't think she had any family, and so she's trying to fit in at this town. So it's a love story, them figuring that out. I'll talk more about this book when I finish it, but I am currently 69% of the way through. The physical book that I'm currently reading is Labyrinth's Heart by M.A. Carrick. This is the 3rd book in the Rook and Rose trilogy. I read the second one in these weekly reads and it wasn't my favorite. It was on there for a very long time. These books are long. They have a lot of world building, which I don't care about. I like character building and plot, but the second book just had a lot of world building. I'm 10% into this book, which is like 80 pages, and I feel like we're not doing as much world building in this book, which I'm very grateful for because that's just not my cup of tea. Even though I like fantasy, I don't need all the things. And this is a very complicated magic system and lots of people and aliases and things like that. So there is a lot going on. So I understand the need for that, all that world building, but definitely not my favorite. type of fantasy for me to read. I know others who absolutely adore the series for the same reasons that I just don't like it. The audiobook that I'm actually listening to right now is Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. This is the third book in the Legendborn cycle. I thought it was a trilogy, so I thought this was going to wrap everything up, but there's going to be a fourth book, so that's not the case. I am like 8% in, not very far, so I'm still just piecing together everything that I remember from the other two books. And with it being a third book anyways, it's hard to explain, but our female main character is still Bree. She is living with the decisions she made at the end of the second book. We're going to see how this plays out in this book. I'm very interested to continue listening, but those are the books I'm currently reading. If you want to know my thoughts and reviews on these books, check out week 18. Some of them will be in there, and like The Labyrinth's Heart will probably be in a week or two, just based on how long it took me to read the second one. I hope you enjoy, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.